we'll go ahead and get started then. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny and I'm with Anderson's Bookshops, and I'd like to welcome you to this Anderson's Bookshop virtual author event tonight with Jeffrey Eisner. We're really glad to have Jeffrey with us, as well as all of you joining us. So thanks for being here. Just really quickly, I just want to take a moment to thank you for taking the time to keep your eyes on another screen to talk books with us. Anderson's is an independent bookstore. We have been owned and run by the Anderson family for 6 generations. Your support is very personal and appreciated by us. So we just like to take a minute to say thank you for that. Especially right now, it means quite a bit. Normally, we would be hosting Jeffrey in person along with over 400 other events in a year, but hopefully this virtual style will keep us all tied over until we can be together in person again, which we were just saying feels like it's coming. We can see that light. I don't know how close it is, but at least we can see it now, which is definitely a difference and a positive thing from that. We have lots of other virtual events coming up. These next 2 months actually are quite busy for us in the virtual event horizon. So do check out our website and our social media to find the next one that is of interest to you, all ages, all interests. We've got Margaret Joseph's coming up later in this week. For those of you who are reality TV folks, I know her from Real Housewives. And also in the cooking field, we have both Katie Quinn and Nigella Lawson in the next month or two. So some stuff coming up. Please check that out and join us. But today, we're really happy to be celebrating the release of the lighter step-by-step Instant Pot cookbook with Jeffrey Eisner. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
Yeah, this is great. I'm going to read your official bio just so that we can officially introduce you to those who may not know all of your credentials. But you are the creator of Pressure Luck Cooking, an acclaimed, easy-to-follow Instant Pot recipe video blog, and author of the national bestseller, The Step-by-Step Instant Pot Cookbook. You've been featured on Food Network, Good Morning America, and Rachel Ray, and create famously flavorful recipes at home in Queens, New York.
And now in upstate New Jersey as well.
Fantastic. Yes. Well, again, welcome. We're really glad to have you with us. I know Instant Pots were one of those things that people kind of, I think it was most convenient when people were working, but then when they were at home, they realized how great that could also be even during quarantine. So how has it been working on the second book now?
When the second book came to me, the first one hadn't come out yet. I was literally in Disney World in January of 2020, back when 2020 was going to be this great year.
Yes.
And
it was going to be the Roaring '20s, just not in the way we turned out to be.
That's right. Oh, they roared all right.
They did indeed.
When my publisher contacted me, my agent, and he was like, "Hey, I got another book," and I'm like, "The first one's just let me enjoy. I'm not even officially done with the first one yet." But I was like, I need a few months to like recuperate from this whole process and take it in and enjoy it. And then after my agent was telling me, she's like, "Yeah, I think you should do it. Let's just do it." And I'm like, after like a couple of weeks, I'm like, "Okay, I'll do it." So, and the first book I hadn't come out yet, so I didn't know how it was even going to perform. If it would, and of course, like I have like the devil and the angel Jeffrey's on my shoulder, like, and with the one of them saying, "Well, what happens if it tanks? You'll have written it for no reason, because no one's going to buy the second book if no one bought the first book." And I listened to the angel, I suppose, and he had good advice, and I did it, and I started writing the book. Basically, right, because it takes a few months for the deal to really go through with the publisher.
Yes.
And the deal was struck right before the world stopped in early March of 2020. And I actually said when we were doing this, I told my agent, I'm like, I think we need to put in some sort of COVID clause in case the supermarkets are shut down or something, and I can't get ingredients to shoot this thing. And she goes, and like that doesn't exist. Like of course there was no like pandemic clause in books or anything like that. She's like, they'll understand if something like that happens, like obviously. And I'm like, okay, fine. Yeah. So we penned the deal, and then everything shut down. And I just basically, come May, my first book came out literally a year, almost to the day that this book did.
Right. Yeah.
It came out April 14th of last year.
Okay.
I started writing the book in May, and I just locked myself up in a room, and what else was there to do really, right, during that time? And it was a good escape for me. It was a huge challenge because it was about eating lighter, and I kept thinking in my head, while everyone was now miraculously getting my first book on time, thanks to all the unsung heroes out there who were able to deliver things, that a lot of people are probably going to want another book to help shed some of this weight they're probably all going to be putting on them while they're indoors and stress eating and this and that.
And learning how to make sourdough.
Oh yeah, I mean, Seriously, like you couldn't even get yeast, right? This
That was me. Yep.
whatever was the things we never thought we would ever be making, we made.
Right.
I mean, I almost bought a crochet kit, and then I had to stop. That was going too far for myself. I'm like, that's it.
Good save.
You'll touch the needles once, never again.
Right.
So, I wrote it in May, and then basically the shoot was in September, all of September, and I kept telling myself like every time I would go to the market, I'm like, oh, these lines don't stop, and if they're not stocked, what am I gonna do? Thankfully, by the time came time to shoot it, the markets were pretty much kind of back to, I don't want to say normal per se, but they were certainly adequate.
They were sustainable, yeah.
Yes, for me to be able to get what I needed and not have to worry so much about rationing certain things. And luckily, there were no toilet paper recipes in this. That would have been smart to make it how to make toilet paper in your Instant Pot. But
I think this is a slightly different book. I mean, if you can do that in the Instant Pot, we might have gone too far as a society.
Maybe I'll do another book that it's just about things that you don't eat. Right. Anyway, so
we could try. Let's get this one done first, though, and out in the world.
Yes, indeed. So it was a challenge. It was a challenge to write the book because it was about eating lighter. And I'm also kind of known a lot of my recipes for more indulgent situations. But I am a man who struggles with weight, and I've had major. When I was 19 years old, I weighed just over 300 pounds. When I was a freshman in college, I went just crazy and started eating whatever I felt like eating. And then finally, like after about a year after that, I changed my life and I slimmed down. I lost 100 pounds on my own just by changing the way I ate. And in that time, I'm almost 40 now. I'll be 40 in a couple of months. It's literally doubled my life since that period. It's been a roller coaster. And when you have weight struggles, you have weight struggles. They're not just going to go away. They're there for the rest of your life. So I wanted to do a book that was going to be a book that where you can eat something absolutely delicious and still be able to eat light at the same time. And that's really what the method of the book is. And I explain all this in the introduction, how I can keep myself in check when I eat, because I'm always going to be prone to gaining weight. And it's just something I feel like it's a story that I can share with others, whether they have weight struggles or not.
Right. Well, I'm in the same age category as you, and definitely noticed that the metabolism changes there, kind of almost without you noticing. All of a sudden, and pants don't fit anymore, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm eating the same way, but you got to think about the different things. So I can certainly appreciate having that available, no matter what your weight history is. I think that's really great. So let's go back even further, because I jumped right into the brand new book because I'm super excited about it. But your first book, how did that even come about for you? Were you doing videos first, and then the book came, or vice versa?
Yeah. Well, I started off, I'm going to go back a little bit. I was, for 10 years, I worked in public relations and advertising for a very large company. And I wasn't fulfilled doing it. I just didn't enjoy it. I was good at what I did. I always paid great attention to detail with my work. And I was a video producer doing branded content for, toilet paper, and of all the irony.
Of the irony, right.
And then instead of, I was in the middle of Times Square with a naked cowboy singing about underwear, and I was like, what am I doing? This isn't really what I want to be doing. I'd rather be home cooking something. And cooking was always therapeutic for me. Always, I learned it from my grandmother. And then the Instant Pot came out. I also love gadgets, so combining my totally amateur cooking self with the gadget of the Instant Pot, I saw it. It was about 4 years ago, and I'm like, let me buy this thing. It has great reviews on Amazon. And then when I bought it, I looked at it and I'm like, well, what do I do with it? And I couldn't really find any really intuitive instructional videos on it. And I said to myself, wait a minute, this could be an opportunity for you to do something. Because I was behind the camera for 10 years, but in all honesty, I went to college for performance. I was going to be a musical theater performer at one point.
Oh, so all the things just clicked here.
They all just kind of got
advertising brain and your performance background. Absolutely.
Literally cooking, advertising, and marketing, and then performance, right? It's all mapped into this. So it all came full circle. And I started a YouTube channel. I made mac and cheese in it. And I was so blown away that I can do that so easily without draining anything in one pot, that I shared it. And I found the Facebook groups of which they were growing like just rapidly.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this thing is literally has taken over the slow cooker. It just has, because it does everything that can do and so much more in a fraction of the time. Right. So it makes sense. And then from there, I started getting, every so often, as I got more attention, I would get some offers for books, and people kept saying, do a cookbook. A lot of these offers were from, all told due respect, were like more bogus houses. Public, they weren't really like, I'm like,
We're
well,
smaller presses that didn't have the same reach.
yeah, but some of these places, they take advantage of people. They really do. I'm not going to name anything, but like,
No, for sure.
they take advantage of these authors. And like, was like, I just really made sure I did my due diligence before I did this, because my advice that I received, the best advice was, the first book that you do is everything, because if it doesn't do well, no one's going to want to bet on you again. Who's going to bet on you?
It's all based on data.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's all about the data and the money in this house. So I was like hesitant with all these things. I'm like, well, what? Because I said to them, well, if I'm going to do a book, it has to have, step-by-step photos in it. Like, that's my approach, is everything step by step. And they're like, yeah, well, we're not going to probably be able to do that with the advance we can give you. I'm like, which was basically like a few $100, some of these places. I'm like, what? And they're like, well, we'll just get stock photos. So I'm like, you're talking to the wrong person. Don't call me, I'll call you.
No.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't do that. Like, sorry, I'm not putting stock photos in for my book. What you're going to see in this book is the actual food that you're going to be making. Like, no. Right. So that sounds like a diva right now. I just said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So
and if it's got your name on it, it has to be your, I totally get that.
Exactly. So then, as I just was sitting patient, I said, listen, if I never do a book, I never do a book. One day I was on Facebook, and in my messages, I was reading through them, and I had a message from an editor at Little Brown and Company, which is, I'm assuming a lot of the folks in here. Hi, everybody, by the way. If you're avid readers, you probably know that Little Brown's a pretty legitimate publishing house.
Oh, yes.
Part of
Hachette's one of the largest in the world.
Yeah. And so that was very exciting. And immediately I Googled the gentleman who messaged me, and his name is Michael Zerbin. And he's a very legit person in the industry. I'm like, wow, this is exciting. I just like, it's almost like I cast my rod there, and then like a barracuda got onto it or something. Even though I didn't even know I was fishing, I guess. So
right.
Anyway, it was really exciting. And from there, we had a quick conversation. I told him exactly what I wanted the book to be if we're going to do this. He completely was on board with it. And then I had to find an agent, because when you're dealing with a house like this, first of all, it's very rare. I got very lucky, because
I was going to say,
so
for you to hear from a publisher before you have an agent is really crazy.
Totally crazy. This is not a normal story. So
no.
Actually, the lesson of this story is, if you feel like you have something to offer that's good, and you can if you're considering writing a book, wait, don't jump on the first offer. Wait, because if you really have something somebody wants, you're eventually going to get that. You
Absolutely.
Really will. Anyway, that was the situation, and we ended up having a conversation. He was fully on board. I got an agent, and we worked out a deal. And I was for the first book I had, I was very happy with it. And I started writing it like at lightning pace, because we secured, the deal was finalized like in early June of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I was going on a cruise to Alaska in a couple of weeks from that point. And I basically looked at it as my final hurrah before I became like Paul Sheldon from Misery, and had Annie Wilkes in the corner, making me write something on a deadline, like in 5 weeks. I had to write this book. I never wrote a book before. So
and they were publishing it in April of 20, then was the plan. That's a really quick turnaround.
It was incredibly fast, because I started writing it in July, and then and the photo shoot was September. So it was so fast.
That's crazy.
But I didn't sleep. I was sitting and writing, and I just constantly, and I'm a perfectionist sometimes, and I read through it so many times, and I guess it paid off, because I mean, the first book performed, it exceeded all of our expectations and how it did. And anybody in here who has it, thank you for having the book.
That's awesome. Well, that's a really unique story, because I've been in the book business for almost 20 years now, which is a little bit insane to think about, but both the publishing and the book selling side, and that's just not how the process traditionally goes. So congrats, but clearly that they saw, an opportunity with your voice and your style and your platform. So that's really exciting that it worked out that way. It's nice to have a positive story on that. All right. So you do the first book. It's a big success. Everybody loves it. They're like, all right, we're going to do a second one. You were going on this weight loss journey at the same time. So talk about the process of, are some of the recipes in your new book, original ones that you've made lighter, or are they brand new recipes that just happen to also be lighter in general?
Yeah, so every recipe in the new book is completely different from the first book.
Okay.
That was actually a very common question. People will say, "Is it just the first book with a lot this lighter versions of these recipes?" And no, there's actually one recipe that's identical in both books, and that's just how to make white or brown rice. Because I figured I should just put it in the second book too. It's
Yeah.
easier thing to have. But other than that, everything is completely different from the first book. There's no repeats whatsoever. They're
Okay.
all freshly new recipes. Some of them were on my blog previously on my website, but nothing from the first book, apart from that white and brown rice, is in the second book.
Sure.
And I've taken some of my favorite recipes that are on my blog and I've lightened them up and put them in this book. But like the best part about that is it's so hard to tell the difference when you're actually eating the final product. It tastes really identical, and you're saving sugar and you're saving calories. It's a nice compromise in sodium.
Right, right. So yeah, that process of then, so when you're thinking of something as would it be a good fit for a lighter cookbook? Are there certain like bench points it has to reach, or certain standards, I guess is the word I'm looking for?
A lot of people wanted to I can't tell you how many times, make a keto book, make a paleo book, please make a gluten-free book. So I'm like, well, all these things are going to be in this book. And I just felt like because you can write your own volume on each of these lifestyles. And I just said to myself, I think there are ways to achieve this under one book and to show how, if something, for instance, there'll be some recipes in the book, and I have a little key to show you in each recipe which one fits with lifestyle, right?
Nice.
So I'll just show you for really quickly in here. Like for instance, if you have like my turkey taco soup, it tells you if it's keto, paleo, dairy-free, gluten-free. It's all those things.
Awesome.
Now, and if something like, for instance, has a plus sign next to it in one of the recipes, like for instance, Jeffrey's favorite chicken. It's a really good one. It's one of my favorite chickens.
Imagine that.
And for instance, it's keto and it has keto as a plus sign next to it. But that's because when we dredge the chicken in the dish, I give you options on how to dredge it. I said you could dredge it in either whole wheat flour, or you can use coconut flour or quinoa flour. So if it's keto, if you use the coconut or quinoa flour, because if you use whole wheat flour, not so much.
Right.
So make sure that people are aware of these things in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually a vegetarian myself, and it's amazing the number of times you run into a recipe that is vegetarian in premise, but then there's chicken stock in part of it, or in the sauce for it, or something like that. So it's really great to have options for those things that can be easily swapped out, because there's so many different ways that people are looking to eat, and ingredients they're trying to avoid or include for that matter.
Absolutely. And broth is one of those things which you'll use for almost every recipe in an Instant Pot, and you can use any flavored broth or any kind of broth for anything. If something ever says chicken broth or something, by all means switch it with vegetable broth.
Right. Well, that's what I've been saying for a long time, but it's nice to hear an actual chef tell me that.
Tell the difference, honestly. At the end of the day, it's so hard to tell the difference. It's just it might just be a little bit of a darker color, but that's it.
Right. Exactly. All right. So you showed us your favorite chicken recipe that's in there. What are some of your other favorite recipes? Not just necessarily that are in your book, but in general, the things that you just make regularly.
I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I really do like eggs in general, and hard-boiled eggs are so easy in the Instant Pot. It's like a joke.
Yes. We just did that for Easter this year to color eggs. And my friend was like, we'll just do in the Instant Pot. I was like, what? I'd set aside a whole afternoon for it.
It's like laughably easy.
Yes.
And you could do so many different, you can eat you'll typically hard boil them, but you can actually do them if you wanted to undercook them slightly and have a little bit of a runny yolk in there. You can do all that stuff. You could do like little egg bites people do, and they get those little baby food molds.
Yeah.
Put it in there. You could do things like that. But I also really loved, I love quinoa lately. It's really a very satisfying thing to have, especially when you toss specific things in there that are on the lighter side, but still give you so much flavor. Like in the book, I have 2 quinoa recipes. In the new one, I have something called Quintessential Quinoa, which is very much a Tex-Mex infusion to it. It's delicious.
And bonus points for alliteration.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. I'm obsessed with that, and almost every recipe I try to make alliteration happen with a lot of my titles. So thank you for picking up on that.
Absolutely.
I also have the what is it? Oh no, a sesame peanut quinoa in there. It's almost like a sesame peanut noodles, but instead of the noodles, we're having quinoa, and it's outrageous, so delicious, and it's gorgeous. It's such a pretty dish with the purple cabbage in there and the carrots. It's a very pretty thing to look at too.
All right, so I already ate dinner, but now I'm super hungry. So thank you.
Quinoa, it's really, really, really good.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be second dinners later. That would be great.
Yes.
Something else that I like to ask folks who cook a lot is, and maybe quinoa falls into this category a little bit, although it's gotten a lot of popularity in recent years, so maybe it's not quite as surprising. But what is a surprising ingredient that is in some of your dishes that either you weren't sure of or you think people aren't going to be as familiar with that have a lot of nutritional payoff?
It's a great question, and honestly, one of the best things that I found for this book, which you're going to see in a bunch of recipes, is coconut aminos.
Yes.
And yes, right? Like,
yes.
And to those who don't know, because I certainly didn't know too much about it until I consulted some friends before I wrote the book. Coconut aminos is an amazing substitute for soy sauce. It's lower sodium. It has no soy. And if you hate coconut, it tastes nothing like it. You wouldn't even, I actually wish they didn't even call it coconut. Coconut aminos, it sounds like some scientific Bunsen burner thingy. It's
like what's in your DNA, right? Like it's coconut aminos.
Yeah, it needs a new name. The name is like a little too scientific for my
I think you should work on that. You have the platform now. Let's go.
I'm gonna.
You have the advertising. We're on board.
Totally.
Okay.
So it basically, and it tastes like soy sauce, kind of mixed with a slight little twang of teriyaki sauce. It has a little bit of a sweeter, touch to it.
Yeah.
But it's a fabulous substitute for soy sauce. And again, if you have any issues with having soy and it's anything of that nature, tamari is also, by the way, a good substitute for soy sauce as well. Yes. And it tastes, to me, I can't even tell the difference between tamari.
Totally. Yeah, me either.
Yeah, but coconut aminos is a great thing to have. You can get it in almost every market these days now.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that the nice thing about all of these different types of lifestyles, diets, and whatever you want to call them, ways to eat, is that they've become mainstream. And so now there's, I feel like, a broader variety in stores of things that I wouldn't have gone looking for coconut aminos, but I think I get it at my Target. It's right there.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Indeed. It's so good. And again, if you can't find it there, it's online. You'll get it in 2 days.
Well, yes, but some of us don't choose to shop that way. So
no, that's true. That's true.
We're a local independent bookstore, but yes.
You could definitely, I guarantee you, if you went to like 2 markets, one of the 2 will have
absolutely. Yeah. We also have a store here called Fresh Time that has a lot of great produce and things too, and something more of the natural things. So I find a lot of my vegetarian stuff there. That's a great thing. So, all right. Well, like I say, now I'm super hungry. So I do have to ask though, what about desserts and sweet things? Is that part of the book as well? Is that something you do?
Yes, of course. I have a dessert chapter. I think my crown dessert in this lighter book is the banana bread, because it's gluten-free. And I use almond flour instead of regular flour. And I'll tell you something, this is it's a very moist and and fabulous banana bread. My sister was obsessed with it. My niece, who was 4 at the time, was eating it like it was nothing. Like if a kid's eating it like that, come on.
Yeah.
So
as a parent, I can attest. If a kid eats it without complaint, it's a winner.
Exactly. Almond flour will be your best friend when it comes down to like baking certain things, especially a banana bread. That's my favorite dessert in the book, without question. They're all good desserts, but that one to me is without a question my favorite.
That's awesome. Well, I know that you have made, we have a cooking demo that we're going to show you. So I do want to get to do that. So if you guys will bear with me for just a minute here, I'm going to get my screen up and we'll show you guys that video. Let me get to it here. My computer's technical difficulties here for just a second. Here we go. I think this one is for chicken cacciatore. Am I right about that, Jeffrey?
It is my chicken cacciatore, and
it's fantastic.
It's really good.
All right, here we go.
Hey guys, it's Jeff from Press Your Luck, and over the course of the last 2 months, I've slimmed down by about 25 pounds, and I'm feeling amazing. Now, I have a new book coming out this coming April, in just about a month from now called The Lighter Step-by-Step Instant Pot Cookbook. It's a companion piece to the Step-by-Step Instant Pot Cookbook, but all new lighter recipes from the first book. So for me, eating lighter is a lot of protein. And I love chicken. It's one of the most popular things people like to make. And in my next book, in the poultry chapter, I have chicken Cacciatore, which is an Italian tomato-based classic chicken dish. It is so delicious. I make it light, but I also make it full of bright, delicious flavors. So wait until you see how easy this is to do right in the Instant Pot. I mean, this thing is done so quickly, you better catch it before the Cacciatore is all finished. Let's do it. We're gonna start with one large, and they're mostly already large, Vidalia or sweet onion. They're the same thing. And we're gonna dice it up. Now we're gonna take 2 green bell peppers, and I'm gonna dice that up as well. Okay, now let's focus on our chicken. I'm gonna take 3 pounds worth of chicken, and I'm using bone-in thighs with the skin off. If you can find it with the skin already off, great. If you can't, you can just get them with the bone in, with the skin on, and rip the skin off. I'm also using some drumsticks or legs here. 3 pounds total between the two. Now you can just use thighs, you can just use legs, you can use breasts if you want. However, I like using the bone in, but you don't have to do that either. Also, I do remove the skins on my legs just by peeling them off like this. It comes right off, very simple, just like that. And there we go. I peeled all the skin off of all my chicken, but I do like the bones in there. Again, you don't have to use the bones. You can use boneless in any type of chicken. If you do leave the skin on, just know it's going to account for a bit more calories in there because it adds extra fat to the dish. All right, now let's sear this chicken up. I'm going to add to my pot 3 tablespoons of olive oil and 1 tablespoon of ghee. And you don't have to add the ghee if you don't want to. You can just add 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil instead. Adding the ghee, which is clarified butter, by the way, or you can just use regular butter if that's all you have. It'll help not make the chicken stick when we sear it. So now I'll come to the control panel on the Instant Pot. So I'll hit the saute button and then make sure I'm on the more or the high setting, okay? All right, and once the butter is melted and sizzling, we're gonna put our chicken in the pot. We're gonna sear for only 20 seconds on each side. So don't go far here. We're gonna do this in batches. All right. One side there. I'm going to flip this over. Okay, and just a quick sear of the chicken is all we want here. You see it's nice and smooth, doesn't stick to the bottom. We're moving to a plate. You could also season your chicken with some salt and pepper, just a few sprinkles of each, but I don't find it necessary. Now I'm going to add in my drumsticks and do the same thing. And place them right with the thighs. And there we have it. Our chicken just quickly seared, and now we're going to move on. Now I'm going to add in my onions, peppers, and mushrooms to the pot. I'm using 8 ounces of mushrooms here. And I'm going to saute my veggies for about 5 minutes in the pot until they cook down a bit and soften. All right, and after about 5 minutes of sauteing, our veggies have cooked down a bit, and they're releasing some really nice juices and color. 6 cloves of crushed or minced garlic as well, and saute that for another minute. I'm now going to add in 1/4 cup of a dry red wine, like a Cabernet or Pinot Noir. Now, you don't have to add the red wine if you don't want to. I know some people who are on keto and they're fine with drinking some red wine, but you do not have to add it. You can just add some broth instead, 1/4 cup. And now I'm going to stir the bottom of the pot. We really want to make sure the bottom of the pot is nice and smooth and clear of anything here, because we're going to be adding some tomato in a second. And when you add tomato before you pressure cook, it's always a good idea to have a good liquid ratio. Again, if you're not using the wine, you're going to add 1/4 cup of chicken broth in this stage. And then we're just going to let this simmer for 1 minute. And now after a minute of that, we're going to add in 1 cup of crushed tomatoes. It's hard to find just a cup, so you might have to get a 15-ounce can and just have it, basically. 1 14.5-ounce or so can of diced tomatoes with their juices, 1/4 cup of chicken broth, and some spices. I'm using 1 teaspoon each of seasoned salt, black pepper, dried thyme, and dried sage, also known as rubbed sage. And now I'm going to stir that all together in the pot, making sure everything is coated with the wine, broth, spices, and tomato. All right, and now I'm going to take my chicken and I'm going to add it right back to the pot. Slide it in there. Any of the oil that was on there, let that get in there too. We're simply going to just smooth it out a little bit here, just like so. Let the chicken rest on top of everything else in the pot. Now we're going to secure our lid, make sure that we're in the sealing position with the valve. Now let's hit the cancel or the keep warm cancel button, depending on your model, and then hit the pressure cook or manual button, depending on your model. And we want to go, guys, for 6 minutes at high pressure. Now that we're done, we're going to finish with a quick release. And the pin just drops. So now we're going to take the lid off. Oh, and that's looking nice and it's smelling amazing. All right, so now let's take some tongs and transfer our chicken to a serving dish. Okay, and there we go. We're going to let that rest. And now we're going to turn our attention back to the pot. And we're going to add in 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. And I'm using salt-free, but you can use regular if you wish. 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, but you can also use apple cider vinegar. And a cacciatore typically has some olives, and I'm adding in 1/4 cup each of some green olives and Kalamata, or you can use black olives that are pitted and just sliced up. If you're not into olives, you can totally add in some roasted red peppers instead, like a jar of them. And now we're going to just stir everything up until the tomato paste melds into the sauce. You can also add in about 1 teaspoon of honey for sweetness if you wish, although adding that won't make it keto anymore, but it'll keep it paleo. And now we're going to just let this rest for 5 minutes as it thickens a bit from the tomato paste, and the flavors will come together as it cools down as well. All right, and our sauce is thickened up to the perfect consistency that I want it. Lovely. And now it's time to drape this over the chicken. All right, and here we go. Don't over sauce it, just put the right amount on there. You're gonna have leftover sauce for sure, and I strongly suggest that you use that over some brown rice, veggies, zoodles, plenty of options. And folks, here's my finished chicken cacciatore. Couldn't have been easier to make, all plated, totally on the lighter side. So good for you, so full of wonderful flavor. And now it's time to try this out. And there it is, my chicken cacciatore. And I think you're gonna see how fork tender this is when I literally just use my fork to go right into it. It just comes right apart. I don't even need a knife. Whoa, look at this. Look at this, like butter and perfectly cooked. That's really nice. To me, this almost reminds me of having chicken in like a ratatouille stew type sauce like I have in my first book. That is beyond delicious. It's really on the lighter side for sure. I love adding the olives because it gives it a really nice savory touch. So nice. Gives it that perfect finishing touch. And of course, some shrooms and peppers. So good. And look, I'll just eat the leg with my hands. Look at this. This chicken is so juicy. It's falling off the bone. And you should feel very little guilt eating this, truly. It's really on the light side. Compare this to like a creamy chicken sauce. You know what I mean? Lots of cream and cheese in there. Even though that's totally keto, I totally get it, but not everyone's on keto. And if you're not, this is absolutely a winner dish for definitely trying to slim down a bit. It's all about eating it in moderation, of course. If you eat the entire pot, might not do you any favors, but it's also going to be maybe a little tough not to because it's that good. You know, if this is my first time using the Instant Pot, I would think you were fooling me that I did all of this in one pot, but lo and behold, it's done in one pot. Yum. Folks, if you enjoy these recipes, check out pressurelowcooking.com because all of my recipes are there, as well as the video just like this one for every single recipe. So I guide you through each step of the way. Speaking of steps, I wrote the step-by-step Instant Pot cookbook. It's a great cookbook. It has over 750 beautiful color photos for every step, as well as a final shot of what each recipe should look like, so there's no guessing. Also, this recipe is in my new cookbook, which is the lighter step-by-step Instant Pot cookbook coming out this April. I don't have my copy yet. I should be getting it soon. And the whole point of that book is to show you that you can cook lighter and not sacrifice an ounce of flavor. Check me out at facebook.com/pressurelowcooking and like the page. Make sure you see it first for notifications, set it as a favorite, so anytime a recipe comes out, you'll know. And of course, at Pressure Low Cooking on Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I have to start TikTok. I haven't really done that yet. And I know I'm way late to the party, but we'll see what happens there. Thank you so much again, guys. And next time you have a few moments to catch up, do it with some cacciatore. Enjoy.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Is it weird to watch yourself? To watch yourself eat, no less?
You know, yeah. But it's kind of one of those cringeworthy moments when I watch myself eat food. But I'm also the one editing the video, so
You're making those
anyway,
calls, yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. All right. And so now we are happy to take some audience questions. If anybody has a question, you want to drop it into the chat, we'll go ahead and get that to Jeff here so that we can answer whatever you would like to know, your burning questions about Instant Pots or YouTube or making things a little bit lighter. Feel free to go ahead and drop those in there. Were there any, I want to know about some of the ones that didn't make it in. Do you have any recipes that you want to do that just didn't make the cut from either book?
There were some recipes that like I would test and they sounded really good on my head and on paper, but again, since it's an Instant Pot and the Instant Pot could do a lot of things, there were some things it really can't do super great. Like, for instance, I wanted to do pasta, like chickpea pasta and lentil pasta and stuff like that. You're going to get nothing but a disastrous, mushy clump when you cook something. It's very fragile pasta, and that you have to leave that to the stove. So, there were those I really wish I could have done stuff like that in the pasta chapter. So the way I look at the pasta chapter is these are pastas, and I do use a lot of whole wheat pasta in a few of them. And at the end of the day, I'm still very much lightening up these pasta dishes. These are not heavy pasta dishes. So if you're craving pasta, this is a really, really good book for you to check out some things that are going to be absolutely delicious, but are going to make you feel super guilty.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I love how in the video, it was very easy to say, this is a quarter cup, just dump it in. If you've got a little extra tomato, it's fine, use it here. They're not super strict. I like to do some baking as well, and that's, going to weigh everything by grams, and it's 9 grams of salt, not 10 grams of salt for the bread. And
right.
It's nice to see the recipe where it's just kind of, you're using a can, go ahead, throw it in,
So true. It's so true.
All right, here's a question from Julie. Unrelated to the recipes, do you have tricks for cleaning the inner ring? It always smells like whatever you cooked.
It's a good question, Julie. Hi. Actually, in the introduction to the book, either the first, it might be in both books, definitely in the first book, I mentioned that. And the best way with this, she's talking about this silicone ring that goes underneath the lid, or the gasket, same thing. And it's one of the most important parts of the pot, because if that's not properly in place, the pot's not going to seal and come to pressure. So it's necessary. Right. And by the way, you should always make sure that it's in the groove before putting the lid on, because after a lot of uses and when you take it out, which I'll just answer your question in a second, to clean it, it can eventually start getting loose, and you want to make sure it's always in there, but you can always replace it with a new one. So there, to your point, to your question, the best way that I found to do this is to literally take it out, put it in a glass full of some white vinegar overnight, and then the next morning, just let it air dry outside. Like let it just spend the day outside on the porch or the backyard or the deck, wherever, on the clothing line. Just let it sit out there, and like the fresh air is the best thing for it. If at the end of the day you still find that it still has like that smell from last night's dinner, from what you cooked, if you made something that's kind of on the pungent side, at the end of the day, they usually are sold in packs of 3. You can get them. I know that there's like, if you don't want to shop online, you can
there's lots of places to get them. Yes.
There are other places to get them, like if you wanted to go to a superstore or something like that, or maybe even some local stores. I'm not sure. I haven't seen that yet. But if you own a local store, maybe somebody should own a local Instant Pot store. There's a lot of people who want the accessories. You can just get replacements. And it's also a wise idea to color, because they come in different colors a lot of the time, to do one of them as, let's say, designate one for seafood, designate one for foods that might be kind of pungent in terms of spices. So you're okay with using it again for those other.
Right. Like your 6 cloves of garlic in the chicken cacciatore.
This is the garlic ring. This is the shrimp ring. So something like that you could do.
Okay.
But yeah, the best way is to honestly some vinegar and letting it
air dry. Awesome. She also asks if there are some accessories that you recommend or like best.
Yes, the most important, I'll name 3 of them that I think are really wonderful for the pot. And that would be a steamer basket. And that it's basically a basket that will fit into most 6 or 8 quart models, and has a little handle. It's really clever and convenient if you want to make, for instance, your own broth, whether that be bone broth,
Mhm.
excuse me, or vegetable broth, or even garlic broth, which I have in this book because I love garlic. And let's get real, it's one of the best immunity builders and boosters.
Garlic broth. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much. It's just tons of garlic, really. And you
Yeah.
put it in the basket along with the other vegetables, which usually you keep the skins on, and then you pour the broth in. And guess what? When it's done, instead of having to strain it through something, you just pull the basket out because it's a fine mesh strainer, and the broth is just left in the pot. That's a really good thing to have. Also, a bundt pan that will fit inside the pot is a nice tool to have for sure. And now I'm going back to my first book, but if you want to make my meatloaf and mashed potatoes in there, that's one of the best things you can have that bundt pan for, period. Because who doesn't like a bundt style meatloaf, right? And we then put the mashed potatoes in the center, and it's a gorgeous little cake.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it's super fun. And spring form pan that will fit as well. Usually I suggest a 7-inch diameter by 3-inch depth, and that's also really good if you want to make some certain desserts like tarts or cheesecakes, things of that nature. Really perfect.
Cheesecake in an Instant Pot, man. This is
one of the best. That's actually one of the best desserts you can make. I did not put a cheesecake in the lighter book just because, look,
it's hard to make cheesecakes lighter, I would imagine.
It is. It's hard to make that one light friendly, and I'd rather it not. I wanted it to taste good. So
Right. No, for sure. Oh, good. All right. Yes, Julie. Vinegar to the rescue. I for sure that cleans a lot. The whole vinegar and baking powder thing that definitely still works too.
yes.
So we'll see if there's any other questions that pop up in the chat. But I want to ask, so you got all into all of this because you discovered Instant Pots. What do you see any other gadgets on the horizon that way that could transform cooking the way that you think Instant Pot has?
That's a good question. Also, the hottest appliances right now are definitely, without question, Instant Pots and air fryers. Those are the two big things to have. And I feel like there's all these different brands like Ninja, and they have like, it can air fry, and it could do all these things, and it could even clean your house. It's like all this stuff. But like what I think is clever with what Instant Pot has also right now is the air fryer lid, which you can turn your Instant Pot into an air fryer. So you can use it just as an air fryer, or you can use it just as an Instant Pot, or you can do a combination of the two. And if you want to give something like my cauliflower and broccoli casserole, cauliflower rice rather, and broccoli casserole in the lighter book, you can melt some low-fat cheese or regular cheese on top at the end and do it without having to transfer it to the oven and give it a nice bubbly finish. So those, I would say, that without question, that the two hottest appliances. But you could bet your bottom dollar that I'm always looking on the to see which the hot new thing might be, because I want to be the one who basically like discovers it for everybody. And
right.
I'm hungry for that, and I want to show everybody how to use it. And like that's
right. So that's an interesting thing I hadn't thought of. I mean, are you in touch with the Instant Pot people? Did they reach out? Do they like offer to sponsor things? How does that work for you?
Well, they authorize the books. They
right.
to use their name, they have to authorize it. So so in terms of partnerships, like that's really the only partnership as of this moment that I have with them is that aspect of it. But they're lovely folks. They're very nice. They're always sending me whenever I need a new product or trying something new. Like they I try it out for them, and I'm always excited because I personally can't get enough in terms of gadgets. Of course, I just ignore how much space I really in reality have, and I'm like, oh, I'll make room for it.
Right. I say that about every book I bring into my house, so I hear you there.
Those are a lot more shelf friendly than
Yes. Well, except that there are no more shelf space. But so they're not only shelf friendly, but then there are piles on the floor friendly, and piles on the stairs friendly, and piles on the couch friendly,
Maybe you have to come up with some sort of like revolutionary bookstore system.
Yeah, my family would probably say that means stop bringing books home, but well, some of my family would say that. Not all of my kids definitely would not. But so Steve asked if you have any other favorite gadgets, and I think maybe not just in the kitchen.
Well, actually, one of the best things that I shouldn't have forgotten this is an immersion blender. It's really clever to have that, especially if you're making soups in your Instant Pot. Okay,
all the time.
Who wants to? The whole point of an Instant Pot is a one pot situation.
Yeah.
And who wants to take a hot soup and wait for it to have to cool a little bit and then transfer it to a blender and batches and then pure? forget that. Just
And
get
leave
it.
steam to escape from the blender, but not so much that the soup flies out of the blender.
It's awful, and it's a mess, and
Yeah.
it's like the worst way to puree soup, in my opinion. So an immersion blender,
Yeah.
you literally, it's like a stick. You literally just boom, right in the pot, and then you push your finger down the button and move it around almost like you're stirring it. And it's within 20 seconds, it'll puree. They're very affordable. They're usually about $25 ish.
Yeah.
Well worth the money. So yeah, don't be without an immersion blender. One of the best things you can absolutely have without.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
So Daniela asked this, another great question. Do you have a favorite recipe for families with kids? Because it's hard to cook one pot when there's one kid that doesn't like this and one kid that doesn't like that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There's always an ingredient. Look at my recipes as a blueprint, right? Like if you find something in there that you just, you don't like, or your kids won't like, leave it out. Just leave it out. There's no rules whatsoever. The only thing that you should abide by with my recipes are the measurements in the liquid to the food ratio and the time and how long it takes to cook something. So if something in there is just, don't let a recipe turn you off just because there's an ingredient you or your children might not enjoy. But in terms of like real winner recipes in this book that I feel like everyone will like, I mean, there's some really good stuff in here. I mean, pesto farfalle is really good. Like it has chicken in there. It's like a chicken pesto dish, and since the green color can be fun with a kid. I mean, I know some kids could also be very picky about colors when they eat, but you can say something around Halloween time, like this is the Wicked Witch of the West favorite food or something like that.
Right. Well, and I found that if you blend it up into something, then it's easier, like it's green, but it's not like a leaf. So it's a little less icky, right? For some.
Exactly. Butternut squash soup is actually kind of a fair soup as well because the color is kind of pretty. It has like that nice orange color and it's pureed. So they don't even really know what's in it. And it has like a nice sweet twang to it. So when they can't really tell what's in the soup, like the things floating around, it's just like a nice puree. There you go. You can just, if bottom line is, if you know that your child or anybody that you are serving the food to isn't allergic to something specifically ahead of time, like you're aware of these things, you could fib a little bit and just say, you don't have to tell them really what's in it. Like just feed it to them. Be like, something of that nature. But I can promise you all these recipes, my niece and my nephew, who they're very picky eaters, I've kind of done that with them before, and they enjoy the food as long as I don't tell them they're eating squash.
Right. I will say, actually, my kids prefer like a pureed squash soup. We actually have one that we make pretty regularly because they like it over a soup that is like broth based. They don't like the broth for some reason. It's just like, I don't know, they don't care for it. But
I get it.
Cauliflower, pureed cauliflower, potato, squash, any of those, they will happily eat. Definitely. So yes, definitely, Danielle, pick up an immersion blender because I've had mine for years.
Such a great thing to have. No kitchen should be without one, honestly, even if you don't have an Instant Pot.
Yeah. I also like the idea. I mean, I think some of the draw of the Instant Pot is that it is the one thing. So I hate buying an appliance that I just need for one thing, that it's just for doing this to eggs, or it's just, that kind of a thing. I don't have space in a kitchen for one use appliances or one use gadgets. Right. So that's part of what makes the Instant Pot so brilliant. It's just all in there and there's less dishes. Right. So
100%. It's a very easy situation with the cleanup. You don't have to do multiple dishes or anything at all. It's one of the best, most appealing things about the Instant Pot.
Right. So what are some of the questions that you get asked either on YouTube or when you're doing events like this for last book or for this book, that things that people want to know that surprise you? What are the surprising things people ask?
Typically the most surprising question I'll get is, are you single? Because I'd love to set you up with my daughter. And I'm like, you need to watch a few more of my videos.
Gotta learn a bit more about me.
Yeah, but that's an honest, it's a question I get. I love that.
Yeah.
Very funny.
People really get to love those YouTube personalities. I mean, they feel like they know you.
It's so flattering. It really is. But a lot of people will ask me, how do you convert this recipe to the Instant Pot? There's this amazing dish I got at Frank's restaurant in Brooklyn in 1963. It closed. It was this chicken dish. It was great. Maybe you can recreate it. And I'm like, I need a little more information than that. But it is funny when I get messages like that. But to that point, there are lots of recipes that can be converted to the Instant Pot. If you have a recipe that's a chicken dish, or that's a soup dish, or that's a pasta dish, or anything of that nature, chances are it can be. And it's kind of a one-on-one basis though, as to figuring out exactly what it could be done. I should almost start a separate side business called the Instant Pot recipe conversion system or something. And give me your recipes, and for $10, I'll convert it into an Instant Pot recipe.
Right.
Because that's very common. People want to know those things, especially a family recipe. Which,
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it speaks to the power of food and eating together, because somebody has that recipe from Frank's restaurant from 1963 and it's stuck in their memory and it means something to them. I mean, it's, food, taste, smell, it takes us right back to a moment in time. And that, people entrusting you with that kind of those precious memories is pretty special.
oh yeah, for sure. It's also, food is a very, very, very touchy subject for many people to do, because I'll tell you, I mean, if it's not made the way Nona made it, or Bobby, then you're not making it right, and you're disgracing that person's family or their culture because you do something that's not how they would personally have done it. But then again, sure. I mean, when I released my gumbo, which is really funny because I feel like some people are like, well, look at this Jewish guy from New York trying to make gumbo or something like that. It's like, well, listen, I have my partner's Southern, so come on, I got a little bit of a free pass with that one.
Right.
But I love to travel, and whenever I go places, I make it a business to try all the food in those areas. I really want to. So when I can do my own version, I can really try to nail it as best as possible.
Yeah.
But
do you have an old family recipe that you've converted to Instant Pot?
Yeah.
That has any stamp of approval from your family?
My grandma Lil, she was my inspiration. She's no longer with us, but she had a really good run. she made it just shy of 100 years old.
Oh, but, amazing. My grandma's 92 next month, so I mean, it's similar timing.
Yes, and savor all the moments. She her stuffed cabbage was very famous within our family, and I came up with one for the Instant Pot with my mother. My grandma never wrote things down, so we just did it by memory, and my mom kind of remembered, and I how she would do it, and we decided to do I did a stew version for the new book, the previous book, the first book.
Yeah.
It was just an easier way. You don't have to stuff roll cabbage, you don't have to stuff it. It's just easier, and it tastes exactly the same, but as a stew. So that's a good example of modifying a classic family dish and giving it.
Awesome.
I'm not sure if my grandma right now would be rolling around and feet under, like, what did you do to my food?
I don't think so.
I think she would be proud of her Jeffala, as she used to call me.
Oh,
look, the food is legacy, and I get it. I get why it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. It's legacy, and you can have the worst day in your life, or you can have an elderly parent that it hasn't smiled in a long time, and just giving them a taste of food and what it can do to their face, and how it can just change everything, and how it can make our awful, crappy day all of a sudden just be amazing, because I don't care about anything right now. What I'm eating right now is amazing. And you know what I mean? Food is absolutely life. It's life.
I just found we're cleaning out my grandmother's house, and we just moved her to a different space, and I found 2 now boxes of old recipes. And the first box is like newspaper clippings from like the 60s of, try putting peaches in your cobbler, just like little snippets like that. But the other box, it looks like something you dug out of the ground. It's like a little metal recipe box, but it's like all tarnished on the top, and they're all handwritten recipes. And like a third of them are Jell-O salads. So you're from New York, so I don't know that you've got Jell-O salad in your world, but Midwestern stock here, Jell-O salads were all my parents' generation grew up with.
I know of them for sure.
Oh yes. So I have more things to do with Jell-O than you could ever think of. Lettuce, beets, horseradish in Jell-O, meat in Jell-O. It's a lot of stuff in there. So those are maybe not the ones that I'm going to savor the most, but they're there, and they take my mom back to her childhood for sure.
I think you have a cookbook in your future.
I don't know about that. The one recipe I pulled out is
will make for her entertaining coffee table book, right?
Well, yes. Well, and it's funny. She did write down like made it 1963 art league party, like, which is just funny to think about. But yeah, the other one I saw yesterday was for the liver dumplings, which is a Eastern European background. It's not high on my list, but
I would try. I will try almost anything as long as it's still not moving. I will
right.
for the most part.
My grandfather, before he passed away many years ago, he wanted oxtail soup, and I thought for sure that just meant that was some weird name. No, it's tail
Actually,
in some broth.
it's really good. I love oxtail, and it's one of those things that became. I know you're a vegetarian, but it's one of
Okay.
those things that used to, like lobster meat. Lobster used to be really cheap meat, and back in the way before our
Yeah.
time. Same with oxtail, and now they're not cheap. It's like but it's like a short rib almost. It comes right off the little bone. And yeah, it's one of those things I don't really think about what part of the animal I'm
Yeah.
eating. It tastes really good.
Yes. Well, maybe I'll have to send you some of these recipes that I've found because I
Yeah,
think they'd be worthy of all of that. But oh, just another tips here. Julie, who's clearly an Instapot savvy user, says silicone lids are amazing to just put it on the fridge and put it on and to throw it in the fridge with leftovers, which is also makes life easier if you don't have to take something from a pot you made it in into a different one for leftovers. And you can use the yogurt setting for rising dough when you're making bread, and they're awesome.
that's very true. So you can proof dough in your Instant Pot.
That's amazing.
Thanks for sharing that, Julie.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Well, listen, we are sort of at the end of our sort of scheduled hour here. What else do you want to tell us about the book before we all go on our separate ways to probably go midnight snack here in a little bit now that we're all hungry?
Don't if you have it on if you're assuming a bunch of you might have Instant Pots, and if you don't, it's a good time to get one. Don't be afraid to use it. It's really one of the easiest, most convenient ways of cooking. It's very stress-free. If you ever cook in general, my biggest tip for you is to what the French called mise en place. Is that how you pronounce it? Everything.
I took Latin, man. I can't help you.
It's everything. Make sure all your ingredients are basically prepped and out before you start cooking, because it saves time and stress when you start the process with the sauteing. You have to run around and this. Just make sure everything is there. As with any cookbook, my ingredients are all listed in the order in which they're called for. So just know that it's easy to line it up. That's a good thing to do. And just, give it a try if you haven't yet. I would never in a million years release a cookbook that wasn't up to my standards of flavor. So again, if you feel like eating lighter or trying something different, do it with this book. I promise
Awesome.
you will not be feeling like you're eating cardboard. I promise.
Having spent this hour, I believe that promise. I think you are not somebody that's going to suffer through bad food. I think that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us, Jeff. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you who have participated and been with us tonight. I know that you're all probably likely as hungry as I am at this point. Can't wait to go throw something in that Instant Pot. If you did order a copy of the book from us, those are going to be signed and they will be available. You'll get an email from us when those are ready to be either picked up or are going to be shipped out to you. So just hang tight until you get that from us. Hopefully tomorrow I can get into that and do that. But everybody else, thank you so much for sharing the time, and be safe out there, everybody. Happy reading, happy cooking. And Jeff, congratulations again. Happy book birthday. And can't wait to see what else is next from you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good night,
All
everybody.
right. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.